I asked 100 FPL experts for their Game Week 11 transfer moves, captains, and chip strategies, so you guys can follow along with the expert trends every single game week. Yes, now welcome to FPL Mate. My name is Dan. I asked 100 top FPL managers for what they are doing this week. The names of the managers are in front of you right now, and we've got some interesting trends when it comes to transfers particularly, but also captains as well. It's not 100% Haaland this week, which is nice to see a bit of variety, and the template is shifting a little bit again this week, so you've got to make sure you keep up. So big shout out to these guys. Let's see what they're up to. So in general, 26% of them are making one transfer this week, 20% are making two transfers, and we actually see 4% making three transfers as well. So what we have here really is a split between half of our experts will be making transfer moves in Game Week 11, and we see 50% making no transfers this week too. So it really does depend what kind of camp you are in. Are you a manager who has injury problems in your team right now? Or does your team look pretty strong right now? Does it look pretty close to the template? Is there any players you're tempted by? Well, by the end of this video, there might be a few players you're kind of a little bit tempted by, perhaps. Looking at those chips, it's not massively a week for chips. The only real trend this week seems to be towards the bench boost. We see 8% of our experts bench boosting this week. And as always, guys, the bench boost seem to be more popular when Dubravka has a good fixture. That's pretty much it, right, guys? West Ham is the fixture for Burnley this week, and as such, we do see a couple of bench boosts, but as for those other chips, no interest in using any of them whatsoever. So hopefully we are going to see some other chips come into play in the near future, and we'll kind of see when the chips are going to be popular. I think Game Week 12-13, we might see a few more chips, guys, so stay tuned for that in future episodes. But let's talk about transfers first of all. So let's look at the transfer trends from the overall player base to see if the experts agree, and certainly there are 4 players which our experts do quite like the look of, as well as the overall player base. But I have to say, guys, the number one, and I mean by far the number one transfer in among experts for Game Week 11 is not on your screen right now, so you're gonna have to stay tuned for that one. But Mateta, Rice, and Burmo, and Joao Pedro, these are all players that actually have a decent amount of expert trend of bringing these players in. We've got some other players like Gabriel, Haaland, Raya, who are popular in the overall player base. Our experts aren't really transferring these guys in, but that's mostly because these are the kind of players who are like 90% owned by experts anyway. Then it brings us to players like Caicedo, Gay, and Welbeck in particular, who don't really seem to be players that are very popular among experts, and not too many bringing these players in. I know a lot of people in particular who I've been kind of reading comments on the videos. A lot of people asking about Welbeck, but just like last game week, this week again, despite Welbeck's form, our experts just don't seem to be interested in him, and there seems to be consistently multiple other forwards that are more popular transfers in than Danny Welbeck. I have to say, guys, there are 2 transfers in for Danny Welbeck among experts this week, but that is not going to be enough to make the first page of most popular transfers. So let's move on to the transfers out now that we know who the trend transfers are, because we need to know what the experts are doing. So in terms of those transfers out, Gyökeres is top of the pops. News breaking that Gyökeres is likely to be out until after this international break coming up. So he's going to miss this game week and possibly beyond. We know Havertz is going to be close to returning to form, and even Marino playing a striker has been doing pretty well. So maybe Gyökeres, even after the international break, we could see his minutes reduced ever so slightly. So it's a fire sale for Gyökeres. The remaining managers, the remaining experts who did still have Gyökeres in their team. And remember, guys, over the last 2-3 weeks, Gyökeres has been slowly trending downwards for the experts anyway. The remaining Gyökeres owners seem to be all selling him this week. So if you do have him in your team, he is probably going to be that number one priority sell for you. After that, we're looking at Tijani Reinders. 9 transfers out for him. He's been pretty disappointing recently, so his ownership is going to be slashed. Under a quarter of experts will have him in their team going into the new game week. That is another player who a few weeks ago players like Gyökeres, players like Reinders, incredibly popular, but actually we are seeing their popularity dropping with each game week. Voltemada is very interesting. A lot of our experts actually picked him up last game week. He was a popular transfer in, but we're actually seeing a few transfer him out, 5 transfers out for him. So the vast majority will be keeping Voltemada ahead of game week 11, but it should be said that, you know, sometimes there's a little bit of an FPL player hokey cokey, and we might be seeing that a little bit with Voltemada. A few transfers out for Stack, not really performing right now at all. We've got players like Kudus and Njai, maybe small injury problems, plus pretty poor fixtures going into the near future. So just a few transfers out for each of these, but Kudus, his ownership going to be kind of cut by a quarter. Njai, a far smaller percentage of Njai owners will be selling him. Apparently Njai's injury, it was just cramp. Hopefully we'll find out more information before the deadline about Njai's injury. But these are 2 players, 2 midfielders, just a small amount of transfers out for them. Then we've got Anthony, Isidore, Gvardiol, 2 transfers out for each of these. But these are players who weren't owned by many people anyway. So if you are one of the few people with Anthony, Isidore, and maybe Gvardiol, these are other real potential transfers out for you. And Pedro Porro, those Spurs defenders in general. There just seems to be like one odd transfer out for each of the kind of Spurs defenders at the moment, as their fixtures get a lot tougher and we move into some other defenders, whether that's Arsenal or, you know, Crystal Palace or whoever else. Plenty of options that we are going to discuss. But before we do, this is the part of the video where I usually ask you to like the video, but instead I'm going to ask you a question. Do you want to be an FPL expert too? Well, there's a good way to begin your journey to expertdom, and that is by signing up to the award-winning Lazy FPL newsletter. It is 100% free. There's already over 100,000 FPL managers subscribed to this newsletter, including the vast majority of FPL content creators, the top managers. Most of them are all signed up to it already, and actually Premier League footballers, coaches, journalists, managers are signed up to the newsletter as well. It's really the biggest FPL newsletter out there, and it's really good. It takes just a few seconds to sign up. All you need is an email address, and what you get is an overview of the weekly FPL news 24 hours before deadline every week. It's a 5-minute read. It kind of fills in those gaps of those things you might have missed throughout the week, which I find super helpful each week. And like I say, the majority of the top FPL managers are already signed up. So if you haven't done so already, and I know a lot of you will have, don't get left behind on this one. Sign up to the Lazy FPL newsletter using my link in the video description. It is so quick, and if you don't like it, it's just 1 click to unsubscribe as well. But I think you guys are really going to like it. So get involved, guys. Become an expert yourself. With that said, let's look at the transfers in ahead of game week 11 among experts. And I promised you a player that wasn't popular in the overall player base, and here he is. Igor Thiago, the Brentford forward, 6.2 million penalty taker with some good fixtures coming up. Maybe not in game week 11. Game week 11 is not the greatest fixture for Brentford, but after that, game week 12 onwards, we're looking at some really nice fixtures for Brentford, really. So for that reason, I think Thiago could become a really useful FPL asset in the near future. And it seems like a lot of experts are looking to pull some money out of the forward area and move it into the midfield or defense. And by downgrading a forward into Thiago is going to be a great way of doing that. Now, Thiago is probably going to be a rotation player. You play him some weeks, you bench him other game weeks. But in general, he could be a really nice pickup and really good value for money. I don't think there's any better value for money forward in the game right now. Even like, you know, Krupi Jr. is looking like he's not going to be getting very much game time moving forward now. So Thiago really is the cheap guy to go for, and our experts certainly agree. The question is it one game week too early on the Thiago transfer? Well, if you've got a forward you need to remove right now, then no. And if you need to free up some money to use a second transfer to make a second move, then no, again, it's not too early to get Thiago. So it's going to be interesting to see if his popularity increases even more in game week 12, but certainly ahead of game week 11, 18 new transfers in addition to his 9 owners that he had already. Mateta continues to become popular. I know Mateta is the most popular transfer in the overall player base, but as always, the experts are one step ahead on this bad boy. So 7 new transfers in for him. He is going to be firmly in the template. Declan Rice with 7 transfers in as well. I think the expert opinion on Rice has massively changed over the last few game weeks. Brian Mbeumo continues to increase his ownership among experts. We seem to see a few more transfers in for him each week. Maybe, and again, game week 12 is a better jumping on point for Mbeumo, but, you know, no problem this week against Spurs. Could be interesting. We got Joao Pedro. Yes, he's back. Yeah, to quote Harry Potter, he's back. And it's interesting. On one hand, it's like Joao Pedro, obviously, his data was incredible in game week 10. He took plenty of shots. He actually scored. He broke his duck. It's looking really good on that front. But on the other hand, you know, a lot of you guys are probably looking at this and thinking, I can't believe the experts are changing their mind. I think one thing that makes a great FPL manager is not being too proud. Just because you sold a player, if you genuinely feel you've made a mistake, don't be too proud to just bring them back in again. Putting your pride aside, admitting where you feel you may have made a mistake is a big part of you know, being a good FPL manager. So I don't think that's actually something to be criticized. Now, that said, that doesn't necessarily mean Joao Pedro is a good buy or a good pickup. I'm just saying that if you feel you've made a mistake and are, you know, I guess confident enough to just admit that and go back on it, then hey, why not? Mark Yu as a 4.2 million forward is going to be popular here as well. I think, again, this is going back to experts looking to pull money out of the forward position and move it elsewhere, just going for the cheapest forward with the intention of leaving them on the bench. We've got Ismail Assar and Enzo, a little bit of more interest in them. They're already very popular players. Same with Timber. And Szoboszlai as the differential, just 1% owned last week and 3 new owners this week. Again, is this premature? Game week 11, Szoboszlai against Man City. Should we not be waiting for game week 12 for this one? So it seems like our experts this week, a lot of them are trying to get ahead of the game, particularly if they have injuries. Maybe they're forced to go 1 week earlier than they perhaps would have liked to. And we're going to see the start to some really nice trends here. So looking at the template, the average game week 10 expert score was 77.2 points. Let me know if you beat the average expert score. The average current rank is just outside the 1 million mark now. That is, of course, a green arrow for the experts, I think around 200k place green arrow, which is pretty impressive stuff. I want to see that average expert rank in the top 1 million, though, and I think that's going to happen next week. And then, you know, it'll just build and build and build from there. It'll just continue to go up as it does every year. We now see 49% of our experts in the top 1 million, 6% in the top 100k, yet we are still yet to see one of our experts break the top 10k. I'm sure it won't be very long before we see that, though, because we do have some of our experts absolutely flying this season. In terms of the template, there is kind of like minor shifts everywhere. So Raya, 1 more owner for him. Gabriel, slight increase. Senesi, slight decrease. Richards and Timber, slight decreases, and Rodon, slight increases, and Rodon, slight decrease. Really, in the defensive position, you're looking at Dubravka, maybe Pope, Gabriel, Senesi, and then the rest of your defenders. Who knows who it's going to be? There doesn't seem to be a very clear pattern or trend among experts, although Richards, Timber, Rodon seem to be the more popular kind of 3rd, 4th, and 5th defenders, if you like. Going into midfield, no change on Semenyo, still at 95% selected. Saka is now up to 60% of selected among experts. Ismail Assar enters the fray as a 53% owned player now. So he is the latest addition to the expert template, alongside Enzo and Njai. So it's actually Reinders who has dropped out of the template team for Ismail Assar, which is quite interesting there. Haaland and Mateta still the big dogs in terms of those forwards, although it does seem Mateta has kind of joined the likes of Dubravka, Gabriel, Semenyo, and Haaland as those real nailed-on in almost every expert team right now. So, you know, maybe these are the players you might consider essential at this point, and then you can sort of build around that. And we see Voltamada down 5%, down to 31% owned now among experts, with a lot of the experts choosing to go for some of the cheaper forwards, whether that's Mark Gu or Krupi Jr. or, of course, Thiago now as well, of Brentford fame. So that's what the template's looking like right now. Let's suggest some transfers based on what we learned today. So before we check out the captains and, of course, the bonus questions, which we do have this week, let's suggest some transfers. So looking at those transfers out, we're looking a lot at Gyökeres right now, who is, of course, injured. So moving Gyökeres as a direct transfer to Mateta, I think as a very simple, straightforward, 1 free transfer kind of move, works perfectly. However, if you are willing to make a double transfer, downgrading Gyökeres to Thiago might allow you to upgrade someone like Reinders or Stack or Dewsbury Hall or whatever cheap midfielder you have that maybe you're not super happy with, up to a Rice or an Mbeumo. And that could maybe allow you, particularly if you're going for Rice, to allow you to continue to be tripled up on Arsenal, which is quite important right now. Of course, Mbeumo is another option there if you want to go for someone with a little bit more panache, which we've sort of seen a lot of positivity in games from Mbeumo recently. Maybe a little unlucky not to get anything against Nottingham Forest last game week. Voltemada to Mateta. If you just want to stay on template, your only way to get Mateta is to remove Voltemada, then that is a possible move. Maybe it's a little bit sideways, but it keeps you template adjacent if that's the only way of doing that. And I wanted to throw a defensive transfer in here as well. If you've got Gvardiol, but also like maybe a Spurs defender, maybe Pedro Porro, for example, moving them simply to a Timber or a Gabriel is always going to be a pretty smart move as well, considering Arsenal don't seem to stop keeping clean sheets. And with Sunderland next, they're probably going to continue. Let's check out the captains. And yeah, I mean, look, we know every week it's going to be Haaland on top, even if the fixture is Liverpool at home. And Liverpool, they are still going to be a fixture that Haaland can score against. Look, it's Erling Haaland. He's doing so well. He is very rarely blanking. He is scoring against all kinds of teams. You know, he scored against Arsenal already this season, scoring in the Champions League. Liverpool at home is not going to be super difficult for Erling Haaland because of who he is. So 79 captains for him, which is 81% of his ownership. So pretty high numbers there. But it is not, you know, all-encompassing, and there are a lot of our experts who are genuinely trying to go a slightly different direction. So the second most popular captain is Saka at 7 captaincies, which is 12% of his ownership against Sunderland away. It's an interesting fixture, but Saka has kind of gone under the radar a little bit in terms of points, because when you watch his performances, whether that is in the Champions League or in the Premier League, he is getting close to scoring, or indeed in the Champions League, actually scoring, creating chances every single game week. So he is always going to be an option, and I think his points in the last 2 game weeks have actually done a disservice to how well he's been playing. So he's always going to be an option for you guys. And if Gyökeres is out, you know, you've got Saka nailed on penalties. I mean, he scored a penalty last night. So, you know, we know he's still great for penalties. We've got Mateta and Gabriel with 5 captains each. Around 6% of their ownership will be captaining each of those players. Again, we're looking at fixtures a little bit here. Mateta against Brighton at home. Gabriel obviously worked out quite well last week. Can it work out again? Who knows? And then after that, we've kind of got these 1%ers, these one-off random experts going for these random players, mostly targeting fixtures. So we've got obviously one person going for Salah. There's always one. I mean, it is really crazy to see that Salah is this unpopular as a captain. But, you know, even now, even against Man City, he still has enough clout. He's still got enough reputation in the bank for at least one of our experts to captain him. But outside of that, we're looking at Burnley at home for Bowen, and we've got James and Joao Pedro. Yes, the Joao Pedro hype is back at home against Wolves. So really, again, targeting those very strong fixtures rather than going for Haaland, who maybe doesn't have the perfect fixture. Is the ceiling a little bit lower for Haaland? Is the ceiling a little bit higher for Bowen, James, Joao Pedro, even though it is obviously a lot riskier? I'll leave that one with you guys. But, of course, if you want to play safe, if you want to stick with the template, you want to stick with the experts, Haaland is your captain, even against Liverpool. And if you want to go elsewhere, Saka, Mateta and Gabriel look like the players to differentiate yourself. Outside of that, you're probably going a little bit crazy because those 1%ers are not trends. And this video is all about finding trends. And let's leave you with our bonus questions today, guys. So I asked 2 questions to the FPL Expert Discord server today. The first of which is, what is the best Arsenal triple up now? And we say that in the wake of the Gyökeres injury. A lot of people looking to pivot which Arsenal players they have in their team. The first option was 3 defensive players, so defenders / goalkeepers, and 8% of our experts said that going triple up on the defense was the play. We actually see that 77% of our experts saying double defense is the play, with Saka as your third Arsenal pick, and we saw 15% say double Arsenal defense with Declan Rice. No other combinations were favoured by our experts, but it does suggest that the triple Arsenal defense is still not going to be very popular among experts. It could work for some of you guys, but it is not super popular here. Really, Declan Rice is looking good right now, but Saka is the preferred option among experts. And you may disagree, and that's absolutely fine. Even our experts, to some extent, disagree with one another. But I'm just here to put the trends, to put the most popular answers out in front of you guys to do with what you will. And the second question I asked, and we gave loads of options on this one, was ahead of the fixture swing, which Liverpool player are you most closely looking at? And I think with Liverpool's fixtures looking really good from Game Week 12 onwards, I think we do need to at least have a look at Liverpool players to see if any of them are worth picking up. So here were the options. So Mo Salah, 8%, Virgil, 31%, Szoboszlai, 23%, Gakpo, 23%. None of our experts looking at Gravenberch, 8% looking at other, and 8% looking at absolutely no Liverpool players whatsoever, not even looking at them. So, yeah, it does seem that Virgil van Dijk is going to be, at least at this present moment, the most popular Liverpool player that our experts may be looking to move towards, but Szoboszlai and Gakpo also with a decent amount of popularity for each of those as well. It's crazy how much Salah has fallen, and Gravenberch, despite his popularity in the overall player base, is just not a popular pick among experts at all. So there you go, guys. Obviously, we'll maybe reassess this one in Game Week 12, where I can imagine we'll actually see a lot of Liverpool players in the transfers in next Game Week and next Game Week's episode. So if you haven't subscribed already to the channel, make sure you do, and do drop a like as well. Really helpful stuff. But I think I'm curious to see what's going to happen in next week's episode. But as we mentioned earlier, guys, if you do want to become an expert yourself, make sure you don't forget, check out the Lazy FPL newsletter. Use the link in my description. Just enter your email once you arrive on that page and you're signed up. As simple as that. And then there's just one click again if you want to unsubscribe if you change your mind. But I don't think you will. I think you're going to like this one. And the first newsletter you're going to get is going to be tomorrow. So look forward to that one. I think you're going to like the content of that bad boy. But aside from that, guys, thank you so much for watching once again. Check out another video if you would like to. And I will see you tomorrow for another one. See you later, mates. Bye-bye.